Have you ever woken up in the dead of night, breathless, feeling this profound, inexplicable sense that you're just not alone? It's terrifying, right? Well, today, we're going on a journey into humanity's darkest and most ancient obsession, our encounters with the other. We're going to explore a mystery that spans all the way from the forgotten corners of ancient history, literally right to the foot of your bed.
Listen to this visceral description from our sources. It mentions huge lights, little scampering feet, and intimate intrusions into the soul. Wow, those are the classic hallmarks of modern nocturnal visitations. You know, what people usually call UFO abduction accounts. And when folks undergo hypnosis to recover these memories, the panic, it is absolute. But here's the thing, this terror isn't just some recent sci-fi invention. It actually mirrors a deep-seated, incredibly ancient human fear, that chilling feeling of being totally vulnerable to forces vastly more powerful than ourselves.
Now, what's really interesting about this comparison is how perfectly modern accounts map right onto ancient folklore. Think about today's visitors. Tall, graceful, commanding presences in white, or sometimes those small, quick grays in their little uniforms. But then look at history. Throughout the ages, we have incredibly detailed accounts of the old gods, Celtic fairies, sylphs, elves, you name it. The source text suggests a genuinely fascinating possibility. What if today's extraterrestrials are simply the old gods wearing new masks? Kind of like they've figured out a way to slip into our pre-existing human mythology, just to hide in plain sight. So, we have to pivot here and ask ourselves a massive, massive question. Have these beings just arrived, like just recently crossing the vastness of space in metal ships? Or is our own world hiding a dark, internal secret from the very dawn of time? Are we actually dealing with entities that have stalked humanity's history in one form or another for literally thousands of years? To answer that, we have to turn back the clock. Section 1. The Global Memory of Giants, a History of the Other.
When we survey world mythology, this grand, epic narrative starts to emerge across an astonishing timeline. In the ancient era, you've got Sumerian texts describing the Anunnaki gods walking the earth. Then, moving to the Bronze Age, biblical records detail the Nephilim and towering giants like Goliath. Fast forward to the classical era, and Greek myths recount the Gigantomachy, the absolutely terrifying wars against the Titans. And even crossing the ocean to the pre-Columbian era, Native American lore speaks of the stone giants. This is a massive geographic and chronological spread. It's a shared global memory that absolutely demands an explanation. And we actually find many of these accounts preserved in non-canonical or forgotten scriptures, much like the ones discussed in this text, the Lost Bible. These pseudo-epigraphal texts preserve an alternative, almost forbidden history of mankind's encounters with these beings. They speak of a time when humanity was inextricably linked to, or actually maybe even subjugated by, these colossal non-human entities.
It's absolutely crucial to understand how our ancestors viewed them. As Adrian Mayer points out, keep in mind that in many native traditions, giants of ancient eras were often understood to be primeval beings that were neither animal nor human. Indigenous traditions, like the Iroquois legends of the stone giant Gada Squaw, viewed these beings not just as biological anomalies, but as primeval forces of nature. They were beings of immense power, intimately tied to storms, thunder, and the very earth itself. Now, some modern analyses of these legends take a fascinating, if somewhat controversial, scientific turn. The sources outline a theory that North American giants could have actually been Denisovan hybrid elite rulers. The idea here is that these invading giants bred within their own groups and brought advanced knowledge of agriculture and mound building to indigenous hunter-gatherer tribes. They supposedly became a ruling class holding the secrets of life and death before eventually becoming corrupt and getting overthrown. Now, we're not taking a definitive side on this theory either way, but it vividly illustrates how researchers are actively trying to scientifically ground these ancient myths.
Which brings us to Section 2. Traces of a Lost World. Let's explore the fossils, genetics, and moons that attempt to scientifically rationalize these impossible beings.
Okay, let's dive into this and break down some of the complex, kind of fringe theories attempting to explain all this. We really have three main ones here. First up is Horbiger's moons, which proposes that decreased gravity from a captured secondary moon allowed gigantism to occur naturally. Second, we have ancient genetics, the chilling idea that extraterrestrials or ancient genetic cousins actually engineered chimerical slave races. And third is the misinterpreted fossils theory. This is the more orthodox view that ancient people simply mistook massive dinosaur bones for the remains of the titans and just built their myths around what they dug up. Let's look closer at Hans Herberger's glacial cosmology. It's a particularly eerie theory of a lost golden age. He theorized the Earth captured a secondary moon in the distant past, and this closer moon actually decreased the planet's gravity, which allowed both animals and humans to grow to giant proportions. During this time, benevolent giants civilized smaller, primitive men, but the moon ultimately crashed, causing an apocalyptic deluge. You know, the Great Flood? The scattered survivors having to start over from absolutely nothing. Remember these giants as the gods of antiquity.
And this brilliantly illustrates why these theories took such a strong hold on the human imagination. Just think about colossal architecture. Cyclopean masonry and massive ruins fueled the persistent belief that the ancient builders just had to be of superhuman size. I mean, how else could primitive man move stones weighing hundreds of tons? To a lot of people, these gigantic monuments were stone-cold proof of a giant past.
But the sources also raise a much more unsettling possibility. What if the giants and monsters of myth, the multi-headed beasts, the beings with 6 fingers and double rows of teeth, were actually the terrifying results of ancient genetic manipulation? Some fringe texts suggest these chimeras, or even giant conjoined twins, were engineered by a scientifically advanced race, perhaps extraterrestrial watchers or fallen angels, desperately seeking to create a hybrid master race to control humanity.
Let's move to Section 3 and see how this all builds toward a stunning conclusion: the psychological necessity, a descent into the unconscious. To really wrap our heads around this, we have to look at the collective unconscious. Psychoanalysts like Carl Jung and Gerhard Adler describe it as the reservoir of ultimate secrets, our mythological past, and the ancestral memories from which all human souls originate. This gives us a deeply philosophical framework for our discussion. Maybe we don't just remember giants. Maybe our psyche actively needs them to explain the world around us.
This quote from Gerhard Adler is absolutely central to understanding this concept. The beyond is the reservoir of the ultimate secrets of heaven and hell. It is the world of the collective unconscious from which we all originate. Just think about that for a second. Mankind's apocalyptic memories, the floods, the falling moons, the giant archetypes, might actually be an unavoidable psychological inheritance. They aren't just literal historical accidents. They are quite literally part of the bedrock of the human soul.
The great poets intuitively understood this. The writer Victor Hugo tapped directly into this collective dream. In his works, he visualized beings growing into cosmic giants. He wrote of a satyr who starts out small, but as he sings of the monstrous land, he physically grows into a titan, representing the earth, the mountains, and the totally uncontainable forces of nature. Hugo is showing us that giants are the ultimate projection of our own uncontainable inner world.
And then we have the poet Charles Baudelaire, whose words illustrate this profound, almost comforting human desire for giants. He wrote, "I would have liked to sleep nonchalantly in the shadow of her breasts, like a peaceful human at the foot of a mountain." It's beautiful, isn't it? It completely exposes our deep psychological need to feel small, to be dominated or protected by something incredibly grand, something vastly more powerful than our own fragile existence.
So, the crucial point is this: humanity constantly reinvents the giant. We see it in the Greek Titans, we see it in the biblical Nephilim, but we also see it today. Think about our modern pop culture obsession with transforming robots, towering mechas, and human-driven giant exoskeletons. Are these technological titans fulfilling that exact same ancient role in the human imagination? Absolutely. We use these towering figures to cope with the terrifying vastness of the universe, to explain apocalyptic trauma, and to fulfill our deep hunger for contact with something larger than life. Every single generation must reinvent the giant because, well, we simply cannot bear to be alone in the dark.
Which leaves us with one final, deeply unsettling thought. The next time you wake up in the dead of night, breathless, feeling that eerie presence in your room, ask yourself, do these giants and visitors truly walk the earth, or do they simply stalk the hidden, terrifying corridors of our own minds?